something strange happening in baseball right now, and if you've been paying attention at all this season, you've probably felt it. For years, decades actually, all we heard were the same tired complaints. Baseball had no stars. The game was too slow. Nobody cared anymore. Attendance was dropping. The average fan was pushing 60. The sport felt like it was stuck in amber while basketball and football exploded into cultural phenomena. Everyone said baseball needed to do something. Anything. Wake up. Make itself matter again. Well, guess what? Baseball finally has a team that matters. A team you can't ignore. A team that dominates not just the standings, but the entire conversation around the sport. A team that spends like champions, signs generational talent, wins relentlessly, and demands your attention whether you like it or not. And now everyone's furious about it. That team, of course, is the Los Angeles Dodgers. Ask around, and you'll get wildly different answers about what the Dodgers actually represent. To some fans, they're the future of baseball, a blueprint for how to build sustained excellence in the modern game. They're smart, they're aggressive, they're innovative. To others, they're a cautionary tale, a warning sign, a franchise that's ruining competitive balance, buying championships, and turning baseball into a game where only a handful of teams can actually compete. They're a super team, a cheat code, the villain. But here's what makes this whole thing so confusing, so contradictory, so fascinating. Baseball has already been through this exact scenario before. The New York Yankees did this in the late 90s and early 2000s. They outspent everyone by absurd margins. They stockpiled Hall of Famers. They won 4 championships in 5 years. They became the Death Star, the empire everyone else was trying to topple. So, if we've seen this movie before, why does it feel so different now? Why are fans angrier this time around? Why does the outrage feel louder, sharper, more personal? And perhaps most interestingly, why do people suddenly care so deeply about competitive balance in a sport they spent the last decade claiming was dying? Let's talk about it. First, let's get one thing straight, because it often gets lost in all the noise and frustration and Twitter arguments. The Dodgers are not cheating. They're not breaking any rules. They're not exploiting loopholes that other teams can't access. They're not doing anything illegal or even particularly shady. They are simply playing the game that Major League Baseball designed. The Dodgers spend money because they generate massive revenue. They develop elite talent because they've invested hundreds of millions into their farm system and analytics infrastructure. They attract superstars because they offer stability, a winning culture, world-class facilities, and a genuine commitment to competing for championships every single year. This isn't revolutionary. This is just what success looks like when you actually commit to it. So what's different from the Yankees' era of dominance? Visibility. Back when the Yankees were building their dynasty, information moved differently. Social media didn't exist the way it does today. Payroll breakdowns weren't being dissected in real time on Twitter threads. Every free agent signing wasn't instantly turned into content, analyzed from 17 different angles, and framed as either salvation or apocalypse. The Dodgers, by contrast, operate under an absolute microscope. Every move gets debated before the ink is dry. Every contract becomes a referendum on fairness. Every victory feels like further proof of systemic imbalance. Every loss gets celebrated like a national holiday by 29 other fan bases. The Dodgers aren't just winning baseball games, they're dominating the conversation around baseball itself. And in modern sports culture, where attention is currency, that kind of dominance matters almost as much as what happens on the field. If you ask fans directly why they hate the Dodgers, you'll hear pretty predictable answers. They're buying championships. They're ruining parity. It's not fair to small market teams who can't spend like that. And sure, those are real concerns. But I think if we're being honest, those complaints are symptoms, not causes. Beneath the surface anger about payroll and competitive balance, there's something much deeper happening. Something more emotional, more existential. Fans aren't just mad at the Dodgers. They're mad at hopelessness. Let me explain what I mean. For most fan bases, baseball has quietly transformed from a sport of belief into a sport of cold, hard probability. Analytics tell you when your window is open. Payroll figures tell you your ceiling before the season even starts. Rebuild timelines tell you exactly when you're allowed to start dreaming again. and when you need to accept years of losing. And for so many teams, that dream feels either impossibly distant or maddeningly conditional. The Dodgers represent the complete opposite of that experience. They represent certainty. They represent sustainability. They represent what it looks like when a franchise never has to tear it all down and start over. They get to compete every single year, regardless of circumstances. And when fans of struggling teams look at that reality from the outside, it doesn't inspire admiration or respect. It triggers resentment because it forces an uncomfortable realization that's hard to ignore. My team isn't losing because of bad luck or injuries or the baseball gods being cruel. They're losing because they fundamentally can't or won't play the game the same way the Dodgers do. And that realization, that's what really hurts. So why didn't we hate the Yankees the same way? This is where nostalgia starts clouding the conversation, because people's memories get selective. Everyone remembers hating the Yankees. Yankees suck became a rallying cry across baseball. But what often gets forgotten is why that hatred felt qualitatively different from what we're seeing now. In the late 90s and early 2000s, baseball was in a weird place. The sport was still recovering from the catastrophic 1994 strike that canceled the World Series. Baseball needed villains. It needed dynasties. It needed storylines people could emotionally invest in, even if that investment was pure hatred. The Yankees weren't just a super team, they were a cultural symbol. They represented money, power, arrogance, tradition, New York itself. They were designed to be hated, and that hatred actually helped the sport. But here's the crucial difference. Back then, fans still believed in something important, that the system would eventually catch up. That baseball's new economic structures, revenue sharing, luxury taxes, competitive balance initiatives would create more parity over time. There was this sense, even if it wasn't entirely accurate, that Yankee dominance had an expiration date. Today, that belief is completely gone. When fans look at the Dodgers, they don't see a temporary empire that'll eventually decline. They see a permanent upper class. A team that's built something sustainable enough to compete indefinitely, while most other franchises cycle through hope and disappointment on endless loops. And that fundamental shift in perspective changes everything. There's another critical difference between now and the Yankees era that doesn't get discussed enough. Modern baseball fans are simultaneously more informed than ever, and paradoxically, they feel less agency than they've ever had. Think about what today's fans know. They know exact payroll figures down to the dollar. They know prospect rankings and development timelines. They know luxury tax thresholds and how they impact spending. They know which owners are cheap and which front offices are incompetent. They know exit velocities and launch angles and WAR and every other metric imaginable. And once you know all of that, losing stops feeling romantic. It stops being poetic heartbreak and starts feeling like organizational negligence, like a choice someone made on your behalf. So when these informed, frustrated fans watch the Dodgers spending aggressively, planning meticulously, winning consistently, and sustaining excellence year after year, it doesn't feel like healthy competition. It feels like a constant reminder of everything their own teams refuse to do. The anger isn't really about what the Dodgers are doing. It's about the ever-widening gap between teams genuinely trying to win championships and teams just trying to survive financially while keeping fans barely engaged enough to buy tickets. There's also a much bigger, more uncomfortable question lurking underneath all of this discourse. What does baseball actually want to be? For decades now, the sport has tried to maintain two completely different identities at the same time. It wants to be a local, community-driven game with regional roots and neighborhood connections. But it also wants to be a global, star-powered entertainment product that can compete with the NBA and NFL. The Dodgers have fully committed to the second vision. They're glamorous, international, analytics-obsessed, celebrity-adjacent. They're built for October, for highlights, for moments that transcend baseball itself. Some fans absolutely love that approach. They want baseball to feel big and important and culturally relevant. But others feel like something essential is being lost in that transformation. When one team starts feeling bigger than the league itself, it forces uncomfortable questions about what baseball is even for anymore. Is it still about shared community experience? Or has it become about watching the same 3 or 4 franchises compete at the top while everyone else cycles through rebuild phases and false hope? That tension didn't feel nearly as sharp during the Yankees era because baseball still felt culturally central to American life. Now, with the sport actively fighting for relevance against basketball and football, this kind of concentrated dominance feels less like sporting excellence and more like structural imbalance that's driving people away. Here's the truth that rarely gets said out loud, the part that makes people uncomfortable. Baseball desperately needs the Dodgers. It needs a team that people love to hate. It needs stars concentrated enough to actually break through culturally. It needs narratives compelling enough to cut through all the noise of modern sports media. Because here's what nobody wants to acknowledge. Indifference is infinitely worse than outrage. Fans aren't angry about the Dodgers because they've stopped caring about baseball. They're angry because, for the first time in years, they actually care deeply again. The Dodgers force conversations about economic fairness, organizational philosophy, the meaning of competition, and the entire future direction of the sport. They force fans to confront difficult questions about whether baseball should prioritize parity above all else, or whether it should celebrate and reward sustained excellence. And there is no easy answer to that question. There might not even be a right answer. In the end, I don't think the Dodgers are actually the problem here. They're a mirror. They reflect the enormous gaps in baseball's economic system. They reflect the frustration of fans trapped in endless rebuilding cycles. They reflect a league structure that actively allows massive inequality between franchises and then seems shocked when people notice and get upset about it. The Yankees once played this exact role. Now it's the Dodgers' turn. And someday, probably sooner than we think, it'll be someone else's turn. The anger will shift to a new target. The villain will change. The debate will repeat itself with slightly different details, but the same fundamental tensions. Because in baseball, just like in fandom itself, the real conflict is never just about who's winning right now. It's about who gets to believe, who gets to hope, who gets to feel like their team has a legitimate shot. And right now, the Dodgers have more of that belief than anyone else, which is exactly why everyone else hates them so much.